Hello, and welcome to another Profiles of Endurance. I'm Father Scott Vanderveer. So often, when we see someone in public, even if we know them fairly well, we have to acknowledge that we have no idea the burdens that they are actually carrying. Those who know Cheryl Sheridan from a distance might know her as an active and vibrant young retiree. They may know her as the teacher of exercise classes for other women that happen in our community. They may know her as an involved member of the community and a friend to many. But only those who know her full story know that she has been dealing with a major health crisis for a long time. And that in the midst of that, she also has had to deal with the most difficult kind of grief a person can handle. And throughout it all, she has made a consistent choice to be as positive as she possibly can. How does she do it? And what from her life might help us to be positive as we face the challenges that are in front of us? That's what we're here to talk about today. And I'd like to welcome Cheryl Sheridan with us now. Cheryl, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Father Scott.
Glad you're
very
here.
Happy to be doing it. I'm happy to be doing it.
The feeling is mutual. So why don't we start by learning a little bit about your family for those who don't know you? Tell us about your husband and your kids.
Well, my husband and I, we met years back. We've been married 30 years in July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. We met, actually, he started work at my place of business on my 25th birthday, and we were very good friends for a couple of years before we even dated. But yes, we had a wonderful wedding with our two beautiful families in 1990, and then we have two children. My son JC was born in 1992, and my daughter Gary Ann was born in 93. So we just live locally, and I'm from Ravenna, and always had a very supportive family in Ravenna, and in the next town. My children went to Greenville School, and I love our small communities. I really do. In our family, like you said, I've had some challenges. We've had challenges, but we get through them together.
Amen. Amen. Well, and it's funny how connected we all are because, I'm the pastor of the Catholic Church in your hometown, and I have found over the years that I'll realize that somebody I know from one association is a dear friend of yours, and then somebody else I know from another association is a relative, and then somebody. It's amazing how many layers of connection and how many threads of inner relationship there are here. And I'm wondering, one of the ways that we've met has been in church. And I'm wondering, not everybody who goes to church has faith as a bedrock of their life, and not everybody who doesn't go to church doesn't. Tell me a little bit about what faith has meant for you over the years. What was the role of faith in your life when you were young, and how did that change and evolve?
Okay. Well, I actually, my husband and I were both, we're both Catholic. We were brought up Catholic. And I actually went to St. Patrick's School.
Wow.
I actually even went to St. Patrick's. And, I often have, I don't know, I've often said, I was brought up with, going to the Catholic school, and my father was, and my parents were strict about, going to church and everything. I felt like I wanted to, I've kind of lightened up a little bit, like where my children, what I tried to teach them is, that your faith should be based on a relationship with God, not just your religious obligations, but follow Christ because you want to, and and just be a good person, and every day of your life just try to trust in God, and and faith. So I've always had faith, and I do have to say that my faith in God is strengthened as I've walked through painful experiences and challenges in life, which everyone has. So I think anyone listening to this that has had, any challenges in life, know that if you do have faith and you do trust in God, it just helps you through, and it does get stronger, because sometimes it's all you have. When you feel like you just can't control anything, it does. It helps you. So yes, I've always had faith in my life, and I do think in ways it's not, it's not even as, I don't know, I don't concentrate on keeping it structured as much. It just happens because I feel it. I want to grasp it. You know, it's what I've always had in my life. But like you said, it can change. You still have it, but it may not be as much, a religious obligation as much as it is. You just aren't forced by guilt to do it. You really want to.
I love that distinction. I love that distinction because, yes, I do think that a lot of us practice our religion because it's what a good person does.
Right.
And we don't wish to feel guilty. But there comes a time in life where you realize this is something I not only want, but like you said, I need. Sometimes it's the only thing I have.
Yes, and I think it also teaches us too, that I don't know, that we should really love has a lot to do with it too. That it won't necessarily reverse difficult situations in your life or illnesses, but it has everything to do with having a high quality of life and the best state of health possible if you have your faith, if you have love for others. It just, your mindset makes a big difference.
I love that. The quote that comes to mind as you say that is that some people are religious because they're afraid of hell. And other people are religious because they've been through hell.
Oh, I like that, actually.
Isn't that so true? You might have faith because you're afraid of hell, but what you said is the motivation of love is so much stronger and more beautiful.
Yes.
You
say it much better than me, though.
I don't know.
Get the words out.
Well, let me say this. One of the reasons you say it with deep integrity and authenticity is because of what you've been dealing with for the past decade. A lot of us have a short list of health problems that really make us feel afraid. For some people, it's ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. But you've got one of those illnesses that is kind of the kind of thing that many people have often thought about or worried about. Tell me a little bit about what you started dealing with. Is it 11 years ago now, Cheryl?
Yes. Yep. 2009. Yes. I thought I noticed that I couldn't taste, and I was thinking it was allergies, whatever. Well, long story short, because if anyone listening to this knows me, they know I tend to ramble and give you a little too much info.
We love it.
I had an MRI of my head and ended up with, they told me that I had a large tumor, a brain tumor in my head. And I went to an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor, thinking, I don't know what I was thinking, but she was sending me to a neurosurgeon. Ended up having a 14-hour craniotomy to remove the tumor. They could not get the whole thing. But I have to say, when they first told me, I've had other issues before that. I had lost my mother and my father already. And, my husband had some heart problems and had a 5-way bypass. And, we went through this as a family. And to tell you the truth, when they actually called me on the phone to tell me about my tumor, I didn't even want to call John, my husband, and my daughter, Gary Ann, and my son, JC. I almost thought I would be protecting them if I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
But then I couldn't get through it without them. And it's not fair to them. I just, that first moment that you hear this kind of news. But, we got through it. We get through it together because, someone with an illness or anything that you're going through, if you're like me, I'm blessed. I don't just have my husband and children that were helping me through it, but I have my 3 siblings that are all local, and I feel blessed. I have to say, if there's anyone listening to this saying, that is recently diagnosed with a brain tumor or anything, I'm here 11 years later, and I've, the first surgery, I do have to say, there's no words for it. You are just frightened.
14-hour craniotomy, Cheryl. Just
Yeah.
A 14-hour surgery in your brain. I think we're all just humbled by the thought of it.
And I have to say, all the MRIs that I've had on my brain in 11 years, I just say so many Our Fathers and Hail Marys while I'm in there. And, I don't know. I think, yes, faith does help you through. Love and support of others is so important. And you get through it. I don't know. I just reacted to it. I was very, very scared, but I wasn't just scared for me. I wasn't, because it is about my husband and my children and my siblings and the people in my community, because our small community is so very supportive. So that was the first of my craniotomies. And the kind of tumor I have is very aggressive. So it was growing, and then I went to Boston to Massachusetts General to have proton radiation about a year and a half after the surgery. And that actually, I have to say, held the tumor for about 6.5 years. It did not grow.
Wow.
It's amazing that we live in a world where today I'm just blessed that I have this tumor now and not in 1980. I mean, there's so much more. Every day there's something new. So this proton radiation, it held it. And then, I've had many procedures and radiations and other tumors that appeared afterward. But, I don't know. I just feel like everyone has something. If you look around you, everyone is dealing with something. And it may not be a brain tumor. It could be someone going through the loss of a job right now with coronavirus or something. Everyone has something.
Yes.
But this at the time, and then when they didn't get the whole tumor, I was discouraged. But I felt like, both my children were in high school. If they were really young, it's tough on little kids, but sometimes I feel that they may not understand as much. But my children, I worried so much about, what was going through their mind and how they were worried for me.
What was their reaction like when you told them?
Well, I think, to tell you the truth, they were both pretty quiet. Kind of like my husband keeps more to himself, and he's, not as vocal. The exact opposite of me, who's very vocal. But they weren't full of a bunch of questions. They just kind of took it in, and I think I worried more because they weren't expressing.
Yes.
In the very beginning. But I think really we were all kind of blindsided. We were just kind of shocked. But I have to say, after going through the, craniotomies, they're major surgeries. It's a tough recovery. But I need to tell you that my only permanent damage from that tumor was what the tumor did before I knew I had it. It took my taste and smell because it was on my olfactory groove. So that's taste and smell. And that, was the damage before I even knew I had the tumor. The surgery, after that 14-hour surgery, yes, I had, recovery and everything, but no permanent damage from that surgery.
Wow.
Nothing. So it's amazing what these surgeons can do.
Masterful. Masterful.
Yeah.
Wow. What was it like in those, let's say the first, you said it took going to Mass General to get the tumor to stabilize for 6 years. What was it like as you were recovering from the first craniotomy and trying to imagine a normal life? What kind of a quality of life does a person in your situation have at that point?
Well, I have to say, in the very beginning, because you don't know. You don't know where your future is going to take you. You know, I wasn't at first. They told me it was probably a benign tumor, most likely. If they're that large, it could be a slow growing. It could, but they don't really know by looking at an MRI. They don't know until you get into your head and get a piece of it or whatever. My tumor is not malignant, but mine is considered atypical, which is so my kind of tumor, meningioma, is a grade 1, 2, and 3. I'm a grade 2. Very rarely do you have a malignant meningioma, but my tumor is precancerous, so it is considered cancer, but it is not going to metastasize, and it's not going to have, fingers and moves through my brain. It's my kind of tumor, in layman's terms, is like a benign tumor, but it has crumbs around it that are not seen by the naked eye or an MRI, but when they biopsied around it, it's cancer cells around it. So now when I went to have proton radiation, when they told me I had to have that, I was nervous about that too. You don't want to have radiation. You don't want to have brain surgery, but what do you do? I mean, you have, and everything comes with a side effect. But no, what I felt after having that surgery, especially in the beginning when I was just not, it was just not feeling quite well. You do. I think you fear, and I thought to myself, am I dying? But, I have to say, we're all dying. We're human.
We are.
We all are, but are we all living? And I think when you go through this, terrible health issues or major things in your life, it kind of it gives you a reset button. It gives you a reset button, like, okay, I'm going to live. I'm going to live now because I thought I almost died, and that's the thing. We're all mortal. We're all going to die at some point, but really, are we all living? And I think people that have cancer or feel that their life is shorter, that they fulfill that time. I don't know. They just fulfill their life they fill it with, again, here we go back to love. And with me, it's not about travel. It's people will say, well, where do you want to travel? And I want to stay home with my family. It's family. It's your loved ones. John and JC and Gary and I, in a different way, everyone through difficulty in different ways, but we were there for each other. And that makes a difference.
Being there for each other on a day by day, one day at a time basis that's so inspiring. And a quote came to my mind as you were saying, for you to say we're all dying, but are we living? What a question that is. What a powerful question. And it reminds me of hearing something that the mother of someone with a very aggressive illness one time said. She said, I don't like when people say you only live once. She said, it's not true. You only die once. You live every day.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, isn't that so true? No, you don't only live once. You live every day. You only die once.
I like that. But and it's she's the woman that told you this had gone through something major that made her realize, right?
Yeah.
But and sometimes you think, why does it take, why does it take something like that to make me realize? But It does sometimes.
But would you say you're a different person than you were before the brain tumor?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Mm.
I have, and I do have to say, have I don't know, in the beginning with the brain tumor and before other things have had to happen in my life, and I've had other surgeries and procedures done, I think that I never want my health issues to define me, though. I don't want it to define me. I don't want people to look at me and know, oh, she's had surgery. I don't want it to define me because I feel like I'm a survivor. And no, that's my brain tumor is not me. I am me. And, so I never wanted anything to define me. But I feel like the more I go through with procedures or whatever, I handle it better each time. I am, when I often say, when people say, oh, Cheryl, you're so strong, I almost get annoyed because I'm thinking, well, I have no choice. You have to be strong. But no, you do, in order to get through things in life, it does make you stronger. I mean, yes, I could there are days I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. But then I remember another one of your parishioners, Mary Jane Presico. She's always told me, you just have to count your blessings. And you do. I have many blessings, and I remember a plaque in your office, and I think you even talked about it on one of your YouTube. I think you talked about it before too.
Yeah.
And it says something like, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. God helps us handle what we are given.
You have I'm just looking at that plaque and you named it. Yep. God doesn't give us what we can handle. God helps us handle what we are given.
Okay, yes. And I just remembered I wrote it down in notes from when I met with you in your office once, and yes, I do. I think of that, and I think, and I think, yes, I'm strong, but I also have God helping me. So you do. I don't know. It does it change you? Yes, it does. But not, it changes you for the better in a way. It does.
Yeah.
I really feel it does, because it makes you appreciate, and it gives you strength. It gives you strength.
Well, I'm just thinking, speaking of strength, one of the things that has always been a trademark of your personality is high energy, and people can hear it in your voice. You're somebody who's, you're quick with responses, you're upbeat, it feels like you must have a great metabolism. But
well, the steroids I'm on right now kind of help with that right now.
Oh.
So I think more than usual.
Well, but you're an exercise class instructor as well, and I'm just curious about that. After the tumor, after 2009, were you able to return to some of those? Did you teach exercise classes with a brain tumor?
I have for 11 years. And the thing is even, people, I even taught, when I worked even full time, I would part-time teach exercise. When I was pregnant for both my children, I right up till delivery date, because exercise, I don't know, it's your physical being. If you feel good, then it helps your mind too, and mind over matter is big too. If your mind is healthy, you feel physically better. The right state of mind can affect your future, it can affect your health, but it does help if you work at keeping your physical self, especially because I had other underlying issues. I had an autoimmune disease, scleroderma, before the brain tumor. So I had other things. But the main reason why I did it, Father, is I enjoyed it. And I have a disability retirement from years ago. And I still taught silver sneakers exercise, which is my seniors, my senior citizens. And that really gave me purpose. It got me out of the house. And it was social more than it was even about the exercise.
Yes.
and during COVID now, I really miss my classes. But yes, if I'm going through treatment, if I'm, not right after surgery, months after brain surgery is what it took. But as soon as I had doctor's clearance, I would be doing it. And it wasn't just for the physical exercise. It was social. It was mental. I just enjoyed it.
It's a beautiful and amazing thing. I think people are you're giving so much hope to the people who maybe are early in a diagnosis that they feel like will rob them of everything. And you're here to say how much it has not taken from you. It's taken some things, but it did not take what was most essential.
Exactly. And really, with that first tumor, I still have no taste, no smell, and I kid my sister will be out to eat with me or whatever, and I'm like, oh, try this, it's so good, and she looks at me like, really? Are you kidding me? Hey, but I do. I thoroughly enjoy my food. It's not just about texture. It's attitude. It's mind over matter is what it is. It really is. Plus I'm an Albano. I don't know. You're Italian. You're going to enjoy food.
She's from one of these awesome Italian families here in Ravenna. Shout out to the Albanos. We love you. We love you. So Cheryl, I hate to pivot at such a positive point, but of course you've been through more than just a brain tumor. And I think a lot of us have been afraid of getting a diagnosis of a brain tumor. That's one of those classic illnesses that all of us have maybe thought about at least once or twice in our life. What would I do if that were my story? But there's something that I think we all fear more than that. And it's something that you had to face without any warning at all. I am so sorry to bring it up, but I know that you really desire to help people who are going through this because you have a story to tell that you wish was not your story, but it is part of your story. Talk to us about that difficulty in 2013.
Okay. Like I said, I have my son JC and my daughter Gary Ann, and JC was living home with John and I. This was the summer of 2013, and that summer he was having he always had asthma and allergies and allergy-induced asthma, and he had a tough summer with a viral infection that was hitting his weak organ, his lungs. And he was home with us, and he was working, and he was just finishing up a college semester before that, and he passed away. He was right here at the house with John and I. He had emptied his inhaler, and he was having trouble breathing, so I had gone to the pharmacy and called the pharmacy, and they said they had an atomizer he could use, which is like a nebulizer type thing. And I was going to be bringing him to the urgent care, like I had brought him a couple of times. And he was putting the machine together, and long story short, and I don't want to get too emotional, but he tried the machine. It didn't help, and he had collapsed in our dining room. And John and I were both here right with him. So I started CPR. We live out, in a rural area, and the ambulances, all of our neighbors. We're in the, it's like our town and all neighboring towns. We're all here like 20, 25 minutes after we called, and it was just too late. So, it was the worst thing that has ever happened to any of us, but the blessing I find in it is that I was here. Both of us were here with him. We were here when he came into this world, and we were both with him. And, I try to find the positive, but it does. It haunts me. I have PTSD from it. My daughter does. It is the most traumatic thing I think that can happen to you. But I have to say that I do feel blessed that I was with him. And, I think that, you lose sight of a lot of things, and it was very traumatic, and it was not expected. But I have to say, though, we had an outpouring of support and love from, again, our families. Both of our families are just amazing. But a small community, I'm telling you, my sister had come, we had 600 people at his service, and I just, it says a lot about JC, but it says a lot about the people in our communities, my neighboring communities. I just, people shared stories about him, and people still share stories, and I love that. What I don't like is when people are afraid to even say his name in front of me. You're not going to bring up anything that's not foremost in my mind every day of my life.
Do you think that's true for a lot of mothers? Because I think a lot of us, you might be helping a lot of us to understand how to support better, because I think a lot of us are afraid to bring up the name of the loved one, thinking that some version of this, maybe she's having a good day and she doesn't want to be reminded of the worst day of her life. What are your thoughts about that kind of thinking?
No, I do think most people would agree. I know my husband and I are very different. He keeps a lot in. I feel like I talk about JC more than ever. And I think I do feel, and I've talked about it with my daughter Gary Ann too, because Gary Ann and JC have all of the same friends. A year apart in school, and she still is with all of these friends. And she said, if someone starts to say his name or whatever, I'm sure she sees some of the friends kind of cringe, like, oh, don't say anything. But I think she would agree, and John would agree too, if someone is going to share a story, or a photo even of him, that if my sister-in-law will share photos of JC that I've never seen, and she shares them with me, I feel like I just had a visit from him. And it is, other people may not be like me, but I do feel that I just welcome whoever wants to talk about him or bring him up. No, you're not going to bring up anything that's not already foremost in our minds, and it's not going to give me a bad day if you're talking about my son.
You will never give me a bad day if you're talking about my son I love so much.
Never.
Oh.
Never. Nope.
We feel it.
But I do get it, because you know what? It's human. People are awkward going to wakes or funerals. You don't know what to say. But I do have to say, sometimes no words and just a hug, which makes this COVID so hard right now. I'm such a huggy person. I really am. And I just love hugs. But I had a friend. JC passed away on a Thursday night. And Friday morning, a friend came to the house, and John knocked on my bedroom door. I was just laying on the bed, and I said, yes, send her in. She just came in and just knelt on the bed and hugged me, did not say a word.
Oh.
And that just stuck with me. And I should probably tell her now, 7.5 years later almost, how much that did mean. And it didn't take a thing. And I remember Mary Jane Persico even saying, when you interviewed her, that she had a sister-in-law that just came and sat in a chair. And she and I have discussed this before, where, no words even have to be said. But I do think it is human nature to just be awkward when you go to a wake or to a funeral, or, you don't have the right words. You say, I'm sorry. And it's like, I don't know. Why am I saying I'm sorry?
Yes.
But so it is. It's an awkward thing, but no, people should not feel like they're going to upset someone. And you know what? It's okay to cry and to be upset. Sometimes I just put on, I had JC's phone that had music on it, and I would put it in my car when I was driving alone after his death, and I knew I would cry listening to his playlist.
Sure.
I wanted to cry.
Yes. Well,
it's healthy.
one of the things you've said is, as positive a person as you are, and as much life as you have in you, you don't really want to get over JC's death.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think what that stems from is when people say, "Oh, don't worry, Cheryl, time will heal." And I think it's that I don't want to heal, and I'm not going to ever heal completely. Time has taught me how to cope and move on, and if anyone is listening to this and they've recently lost a child, I know it's raw right now, and I don't want to tell them that time will heal. Yeah. Because I think it's the wrong verbiage. I think it's because you don't ever heal. He's part of me. He's my baby, and I think with my health issues, I think I've already told you, I don't want them to define me. So I don't really feel like I need to tell people about my health issues right off the bat. But being a mother who has lost a child, it changes you more than anything else will, and it does define me. And I think if I meet someone new, I have found in the past 7 years, I need to tell them that I've lost a child. I need them to understand who I am. It is part of me.
Yes.
And so I don't know. I think, you don't completely heal from it. I mean, from any loss. Do we completely heal? But especially a child, and you do. You go on through life with the what ifs and, did I do, I was going to be taking him to the urgent care, after he tried this machine that I witnessed triggered his death. It didn't cause it, but it was too much for his lungs to handle. But, what if, and I'm thinking, well, geez, should I have taken him to the ER? But you can't do that to yourself. Right. But yes, he is. He was only on this earth for 21 years, but boy, did he have a fulfilling, the stories people shared at his memorial, the stories I still hear today, and the impression he left on so many make me so proud.
Tell us about him, because he was, I'm going to ask if you're willing to share a picture. Well, for those who are watching the YouTube version of this, they'll get to see a picture of, first of all, such a handsome young man.
Oh, thank you.
So handsome. But tell us more about him. What kind of things do you cherish about him, and what kind of things have you heard people say they cherish about him?
Well, he was passionate about, friends that he had. He had a lot of friends, but it wasn't never like a clique. Neither of my children ever had like a cliquey group in school. Just friendly with everybody. But he was passionate about baseball. He loved all sports, but baseball was his sport. And actually, after his death, his coach for his travel team, which he was still playing on at 21, and his green, down at the school, they have his uniform in a shadow box, and it's up on the wall at the school. In memory of JC, and we do a scholarship every year for a senior who plays varsity baseball at the school, and they get a scholarship. And that's not about how you play baseball. It's about sportsmanship and character, because Jace was a good team player, and was just passionate about it. He was family was always big with us. He just adored all of his family, but his sister JC and Gary-Ann were very, very close. They were a year apart in school, and like I said, they had all the same friends, but they never really bickered. They didn't really fight much. It was kind of amazing at how well they got along. So Gary-Ann not only lost her brother, but her best friend. He really was her best friend. And, what a blessing that she had him, and that she still does. She still does. And he was also, looked forward to family, gatherings and everything, which, what sometimes, I'm sorry, but what 18-year-old boy or 19-year-old, really wants to go to a family gathering.
Right.
But both of my children, they, always enjoyed the family. And, he was going to, he graduated high school in 2010. And now let me think. And he was at Hudson Valley. And this will tell you about JC. I remember telling him, you got great SAT scores. You could go anywhere. He goes, Mom, I don't even know what I want to go to college for. So I should go to community college just to, to figure it out first.
Wise.
Smarter than me. I'm thinking, wow, you're onto something here. So he had just finished up Hudson Valley, and when he passed away, but he was working at age 14. He started working as kitchen help down, like doing dishes, probably in the beginning when he was 14, when he got his working papers, right down in our town, and he was there 7 years. Every summer he was there, and he ended up helping the cook, and he went up the ladder in the kitchen, but he was dedicated. His summers, he would have his alarm go off. He wouldn't even have an alarm go off. He would just get up at like 5 to go down and prepare breakfast for the camp goers down at the place, and then he'd come home, and then he'd have to go back to work for the lunch shift, and then come home, and then go back for the dinner shift. And I used to say to him, this is crazy. Your whole summer is, you've got to kill time and stay close to home. This is ridiculous. But he had a good work ethic, and that was shared at his memorial too, is, people from work that were, I heard from his superiors how they were just impressed with him, and that he was always pleasant, and that he was dedicated and had a good work ethic, and it made me proud. And Gary Ann's the same way. My daughter, she graduated St. Rose, and she, it's like I wasn't really supportive at first when she said, well, I'm going to do blog, and she was still working. She said, well, I'm doing so well with this blog. She does, it's called the Peachy Prodigy, and she's a recipe developer and content creator, and does health tips, kind of like, almost like health coach type thing on different platforms, and she's very successful. And so I'm very proud of, of the work ethic that these kids have. But yes, I do. I still hear, funny, goofy stories from friends, and, from his bosses, or from people in college, or his teachers in school, that'll all remember his smile, or remember, it does. It just puts a smile on my face when people share. It really does. But he was, he was just a family guy. He's stuck to his own, I don't know, he just walked his own walk. No one was going to sway him, but I do have to say what my daughter said. She goes, Mom, you always tell good stories. She goes, but he was so bad when he was little. I remember him, you couldn't do timeout. I'm like, Carrie Ann, you're right. You're right. When someone passes on, we kind of forget the things that drove us crazy.
That's true. And he was naughty when he was little.
Oh, yeah. It was, I don't know. I remember my father used to say, he goes, whoever came up with this timeout. But Jake, it was like I could never get to him. I would be in the market, and he would have a fit because he couldn't have something, and I would just leave the market with a basket there and never even go through the checkout, because I'm like, I can't, I have to leave.
He was that strong-willed.
Yes, he was strong-willed, but yes, I do have to say, after he passed, I tried the support group. There's Compassionate Friends. I've had other people, Mary Jane Persico and Elaine Christopher, different people in your parish who have lost children, who have been key people for me. Compassionate Friends, I went with them to one, and then I went to another one on my own. And what it is, it's a support group for those parents who have lost children. And, support groups are people talking, and we all know I love to talk. But I couldn't do this support group. I couldn't do it. It was just too painful for me. It was too much pain in one room. And I don't know if maybe I went too early after JC's death, or if I should give it another try. But I had like a headache the day after both nights that I went to these Compassionate Friends meetings, because I just cried the whole night, So I thought that was too much for me, and I do want to give it another chance.
You know what we might do, Cheryl? Maybe when we post this podcast, I'll leave a link to Compassionate Friends in the description of the podcast, so that if somebody's interested in checking out information about Compassionate Friends, they can do that. And I think it probably is a good idea for you to give it maybe one more chance. But I also think there's another wisdom here that says it may not be for you. And I know, talking to other mothers who've lost children, they've often told me there is no prescription for how to move forward. It is dependent upon each person.
Exactly. And Compassionate Friends is a wonderful group, and they I'll get mailings from them too. They have newsletters and, helpful poems and stories from other parents. And that was more of what I could handle at the time. But I do think I'm ready to try to go. As a matter of fact, we're approaching the holidays, and they do candle lightings and different things that time of year. And I think I am going to give it a try again this year.
Oh, that's a lovely goal. That's a lovely goal. And I support it. I support it. And I also support if you try it again and it once again doesn't hit the mark. Wonderful for you to be compassionate to yourself, to be your own compassionate friend. If it doesn't work, and say, I'm not going to beat myself up for not doing something that works for others but may not work for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, because you do. I think you do. I know everyone there at these meetings are going through life with a heavy heart, a hole in their heart, whatever, you do. You go through life. It does change you, but you do cope, you do grow, and the help of others who go through the same thing, it always helps. It does. It's why I'm doing this podcast with you. I know that if it does help even one person, it makes me feel better.
I know it will. And that's why it is so good of you to share, especially because everybody's story is unique. But this is probably a good time for us to be reminded of the fact that in the middle of this terrible grief, you still were dealing with a brain tumor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do have to say, though, so that radiation did hold it, but I have to say that tumor started, I think grief does a lot to you.
Yes.
Me going out in public and putting on my smile, and, some days I'm like, I just can't do it. It's too tiring. But I think that does do a lot to you, because my tumor did start to grow. Again, after JC passed. And I say it that way, like it affected it, because I do think grief does a lot to you. Like I said, mind over matter does a lot to you.
Yeah.
But, so yes, that tumor was growing again. In the summer of 2017, I had 3 brain surgeries. Now they tried to approach through my nose to get the tumor, and they went over my eyebrow instead of a full craniotomy, and they got the whole tumor. They got it all.
Wow.
And it was wonderful, but then I ended up with a spinal fluid leak, and they had to go back in through the nose and repair, and then I had another spinal fluid leak. So that summer was 3 surgeries, 2 of which were just repairs, and part of the reason why I really can't have more brain surgeries, because it was just, it's too frail in there now. Too much has been refused. But then it still was growing. So then 9 months after that, they did another MRI just to be sure everything was good, and they found another tumor.
Oh, Cheryl.
So that kind of threw me for a loop. It was way smaller than the first one. The first one was, like baseball size. People compare. Why do we compare tumors to inanimate objects or to fruit? People say, oh, it was a grapefruit size, or it was the size
That's
of
true.
a grape.
We do, don't we?
Yes, we do. But I went from the size of an orange to the size of probably a grape, because now the tumor that I have is 1 centimeter, which is small. But it's all real estate of where these tumors live in your brain. And so this one has me a little bit more frightened. I'm still dealing with it, and I've had a couple of surgeries on it. I've had radiation on it again. This radiation didn't work to stop it, but I can't have surgery or radiation again. That's just too risky to keep having them. So I have a wonderful oncologist that is, and I've been to Sloan Kettering in New York City. I've been to Mass General again in Boston. I've seen the best of the best, and they all agreed. I started a chemo treatment. Well, this is kind of funny. April Fools. During a pandemic, I started chemo and started it. I was supposed to start it April 1st, but I started it April 2nd.
Who would
it's very
believe
appropriate,
it?
isn't
Yes,
it?
it is. It is.
So the chemo, I was pretty tolerant of it in the beginning. But they had me on heavy steroids too for brain swelling on this one's on my optic nerve. It's taken out my pituitary gland, and it's on my internal carotid arteries in my brain. It sounds like it's a huge tumor, doesn't it?
Boy, that's some pretty serious real estate for this little centimeter.
I know, it's a centimeter. I'm thinking, how is it everywhere? I don't get it. But it's, it is what it is, I guess. So this chemo, I think it was keeping it stable because I was doing an MRI every month, and it was growing, but not as fast as it was. But I did lose vision in my left eye, which was 2020 in March, and it's completely gone. But my right eye, from the surgery 2 years ago, I have half the field of vision in my right eye, meaning that the top half I see is black, the bottom half I can see. But that has been stable throughout all of this. So I'm praying to God that this stays stable. I see a neuro-ophthalmologist, and I, deal with the division of the blind just to be prepared. But I just pray that it stays stable, and it has been. So there's power in prayer, because I've had my doctor say, that radiation went right through that eye, through that optic nerve, and I don't know how it's still hanging in there, but it is.
Wow.
So, again, I know I have many prayer chains out there. People have said, do you mind if I put you on a prayer chain? I'm like, please do. Please.
Yes, yes.
Because no matter what doctor I have, my sister Tricia had told me years back when I was going to Boston to see another doctor, and I was nervous about seeing another doctor, and she said, you know what, Cheryl, she said, you're in God's hands. The doctors are all just his support staff. And that stuck with me. I'm thinking, you know what, you're right. So
that's powerful. You're in God. God is your physician. Everybody else is support staff.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, Cheryl,
Yep.
Cheryl, vision. It sounds to me like vision would feel a little different than some of the other symptoms you've had. That's a pretty unkind cut. This is one of the harder things you've been through. Am I right about that?
It truly is, because I have to say, for the 10 years before this surgery, maybe 9 years before, when I had no taste or smell, I would joke about it, and I would say, well, it's not stopping you from eating, and I would kid about it. But then I would also say, I've been known to say, as long as it's not my vision, you might as well kill me if it's my vision. So now I tell John, now that it's happening, I'll tell him, okay, I'm not suicidal. Don't worry. I know I've said that for years. But, the thing is when it's happening to you, and this is if anyone else is going through anything with vision, because people with diabetes have fear with vision.
Yes.
And other health issues. no, you're not going to wake up blind. And that's what my neurosurgeon said. He goes, Cheryl, it's not going to happen quickly. And as much as it sounds scary, you'll get used to it gradually, and you may not lose it all. So yes, I do always try to stay positive, but I'm very fearful when it comes to the vision. When I walk my dog, I try to close my eyes to see, could I do this? And I think, nope, couldn't do it.
Oh.
But, it just, a lot goes through my head. But I think, when you try to stay positive, and then when I turn on the news these days and it's COVID or whatever, it's hard to stay positive sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I just step back and count my blessings. I think of Gary Ann, my daughter, who is she just got married this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, and we love him. We love Chris. He's just wonderful. He's good to her. He's good to us. He's a good person. She's had 2020, everyone says, is a crazy year with COVID, but I told Gary Ann, I said, you know what, you got married, you bought a house, your business is thriving. I mean, you know what, you had a good year. And yeah, the wedding, we didn't have the reception. We can't do that with COVID. Hopefully next year we'll do that, and we'll just take one day at a time. But, you have to count your blessings. So,
it sounds too like she must have some of your genes, because when I think of all that she's dealt with in her, 27 years, that's a lot that she's dealt with. But it sounds like, her business, this blog, she is an inspiration to people.
Oh, I need to tell you, she's an inspiration to me. She's helped me and so many people that I know and don't know, I'm sure, with their grief, because she not only shares how living a healthy lifestyle can help you, physically, but mentally, and how it's helped her deal with her grief. And like me talking to you and trying to help others through this podcast, Gary Ann every day, I think, is helping people through her, through her posts. She will share books on grief and different things that have helped her. It's not just about eating healthy or exercise or do yoga. All these things she does to help herself, she shares. But she also shares about her PTSD, because she has PTSD after JC's death.
Yes.
And she's done a couple of podcasts and interviews with people, and she's known around the world because of this internet.
Amazing.
She has. She's done well, and John and I are so proud of her. So proud. And Chris is so supportive too, her husband. But yes, she is. She's a positive person, and I do think, there's many times, Father Scott, that I think, she's watched her father and her mother suffer with health issues, and her grandparents, and and then the death of her brother and best friend, and I think, but she just has grown, and she shares so much. But I think it helps her. I think it's, even if she has tried to seek, I think I've tried to seek, a grief therapist after Jace and everything. And when Gary Ann lived in California, I think she tried, but I think she's been her own therapist by helping others.
Oh.
I really do. And I am.
That's the therapy.
Yeah. And I do. I learn from her every day. I kind of wish she lived home still so she could cook for me, because some of the things she puts on this site, I look and I'm like, can you save me some of that? But yes, very, very proud. And I do. I just feel like she didn't miss a step. He passed away when she was still going to college, and her semester started like the week after JC's memorial service. And I had called St. Rose just to say, this is what happened. And they said, they're just getting syllabus and everything this week. It's fine. She can start later. No, Gary Ann started on time.
Wow.
She was there. she was like, Mom, I need to keep distracted. Mom, and she persevered through that semester and semesters after. And I don't know, my jaw just dropped at my own daughter. I just was amazed. And then worried at the same time, like, oh my God, is she really okay? Because I'm thinking, are you really okay? But yeah, she does. She talks about it, and she'll talk to me, and she's very healthy about it. I don't know. I think we all find that if you trust God, and if you you have the love and support of other people and loved ones, I think it makes a big difference.
What do you do? What do you do? I'm just thinking. So you lost the smell and the taste sense, and you lost some other things in your life from surgeries. You lost some months of your life from being able to go outside and being able to do things. Then you went through the terrible grief of losing JC. And you've gone through all of these ups and downs and countless surgeries and therapies and appointments in New York and Boston. And the one thing you said to God, maybe not in words, but in intention, is just don't mess with my vision.
I know.
And then your vision. So I guess it brings up, and as a priest, I hear a lot of people wrestling with being angry with God.
Yes.
When something happens that feels unfair, like I let you, I said okay to taking everything, but just not my vision. I didn't fight you on any of it, and now you're taking my vision. And I guess the problem is when we feel angry with God, it doesn't always feel good, because then we feel guilty about being angry with God. We feel worried or fearful. Is there going to be payback for being, angry?
Yes, am I going to be struck by lightning? But, when people say silly things like that.
Right. Silly things that reflect actually a deep, a real insecurity,
Yeah.
What do you think? You've wrestled with this. This is not new to you. What do you say about all that? What do you do with the anger that is natural when it feels like, all right, can you cut me a break, dude? Come on.
Yes. Yes. Again, I'm going to go back to your plaque in your office where it says God doesn't, that God doesn't give us more than we can handle, that God helps us handle what we were given.
There it is. Yeah.
And I have to say, I don't know. Because when I'm angry, because I will get very angry, and I have to say, especially after JC, when I lost JC, I think is when I was, I don't even like to say that I was angry with God, but I was very angry. And I think, though, with me, that, like, when there's, I don't know, I just don't want to place blame on God. It's like there's no one else to blame. Then you have to be careful, though, with God, because he's more powerful than my fear and my anger.
Oh.
So I need to respect God, but I think instead of being angry with God, I think I'm just seeking in our relationship, I'm seeking an understanding as to why. And I understand that, I don't know, maybe I'm seeking God's wisdom, or, and that's where, like, that Serenity Prayer comes in too. I often think of that, I want God to grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, and courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Powerful.
And it is a powerful prayer, and then I think, if God controls all things, then why is he allowing this to happen? But then I flip it and I say, well, no, I'm just going to ask him to help me through it. So I try to let go of anger and trust in God. That's why faith is the biggest component here. You need to trust in God. But when you keep feeling like you're getting knocked down and you're feeling sorry for yourself, it's hard to do that. It's very hard. And, I don't know. I don't know. It kind of brings me to, that people say that everything happens for a reason. I don't know. I go back and forth with that too, because my faith says, well, yeah, everything's God's will and, the divine plan. And we're not meant to understand until heaven. And we must surrender the need to understand and to trust it. I don't know if it comes from me being a control freak, but I need to control. I don't know. But I think with me, I think that accepting some unforeseen reason that you have no control over means that, I don't know, that you're kind of a victim of your own circumstances. I don't know. I feel like I would rather shape my despair and my pain into hope and kind of like look back with gratitude and not be angry. Yeah, there's no, anger's not going to get me anywhere. So I just have to look at this unfair event that has battered me and leave it in God's hands and just have hope and dig into my virtues to survive.
Do you know what it sounds? I mean, the image that I get as you say that is, if life is like sitting at a table and what is all over your table for good reason is pain and despair. I love that image of you saying, I want to see if I can shape it into hope. I mean, that to me is just so it's a richer version of that whole, well, all I've got right now is lemons and people are coming over for a backyard picnic. What should I serve to drink? Lemonade.
I love that.
You know what I mean? It's real. All I have is lemons. They can't drink lemons, but they can drink lemonade. And if all I have is fear and pain and anger and despair, well, I've got a lot of energy there, and that energy maybe can be reshaped into hope.
Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like so many people do deal with something in their lives. I mean, yes, I had my moments where it's like, come on, this is enough. I can't handle anymore. And when people say, and the anger, it isn't really just directed to get, like, I have loved ones, and this is where guilt feel really comes into the mix again. I have loved ones, family and people of faith and people, just friends in passing that will try to make me feel better, and they'll say, oh, Cheryl, it's God's plan, and and there's just some days, Father Scott, that I just want to be angry and I don't want people to fix it.
You got
some
it.
Days, I just, and I just put on the happy face, thank you, and then I just walk away like, oh my God, I'm so sick of people trying to fix me.
Yeah.
But they mean well, and they don't like to see you hurt.
That's right.
I do appreciate it, but then I get mad at myself and I feel the guilt because I'm thinking, well, they were just trying to help you. What is your problem?
There are so many people listening right now that are so relieved to hear you say that, because that's what they're struggling with. They're like, I want to be open to comfort. I want to be open to consolation, but I can't control the fact that some days I don't want you trying to make it okay. Because it does. Well, it's like it's maybe a relative of what you said. For anyone who thinks that the best thing they could do for you is take away all your sorrow over JC, they actually wouldn't be helping you. You don't want to get over it.
I don't want to. Nope. I do appreciate what they're trying to do, but and the thing is I do have so many people in my life. You had mentioned when I was talking to you earlier, I mean, social media is a nice tool. And I do have so many people through classes and even just acquaintances, people that were taking my class like just once a week or whatever. And I know them, but when I want to give an update as to what's happening with my tumor or whatever, I feel so blessed. I have so many people in my life that I can't call them all. I can't. So, but I don't want to go on social media and say, this is what happened. And this is, I don't want to give too much info. So I'll just do little things, little updates like, oh, I had my MRI, tumor's stable. Thank you for prayers. I appreciate your support. Father Scott, I will have probably, hundreds of people. You're still in my prayers. You're still, and I've even put things where I put on, I'll put a post and I'll say, no need to respond. And people still do. And, I'll have other people say, oh my God, I don't even respond because you have like hundreds that respond. And I do feel blessed. But then I'm thinking, oh, I'll get cards in the mail. I'll get people offering for rides because I can't drive anymore with my vision. And I just so appreciate it. But then I'm like, oh man, I can't drive and I hate this. And,
Yeah.
So it is, it's very, you do have to learn though, to just, I think I don't know what it was I don't know if it was a YouTube or podcast of yours that I heard it, or something a parishioner had said, when you said, when you live in your heart, magic happens. And when I heard that, it was something that you had broadcasted. And when I heard that, I thought, yes, it boils down to the right state of mind, and love helps that. But I don't know. But my survival, I have to say, yes. Number one is faith, and number two is, or maybe even equal with, I don't know. It's like, because love and support of my family, my friends, my community, I couldn't do this. When people are alone, it saddens me, because I am very blessed to have so much love and support. But again, if people are alone, there are support groups.
Yeah.
And if the support group like Compassionate Friends doesn't work, you meet with one person who has lost a child, or has a brain tumor, or has whatever your problem is, MS, or whatever it is. Just reach out and try to find someone who can understand what you're going through. Because, so many people, especially the loss of a child, you don't want people to get it. I don't want people to.
Right. You would love to spare them. You don't have an enemy you hate enough to wish this upon them.
No, I do think if someone's a parent, they get the fear. I think that's everyone's worst fear. But no, there are options. There's ways to try to find that hope for your future. But to endure through things like that, life is difficult. And actually, I think, if you actually had a room of 300 people or 400 people, it doesn't matter how many, it could be thousands. And if you said, okay, we're going to break everyone up into support groups, it could be for lost job, or death of a loved one, or, cancer, or MS, or another autoimmune disease. I don't think one person would be left in that room.
There it is.
Someone would have to go to some support group. So That being said, everyone is dealing with something. And when people have said to me, Cheryl, I don't want to complain to you. I mean, geez, you've lost JC, and that's the worst. And I'm like, well, no, when you own it, it's the worst. So if it's your problem, no, you can't. No one can grade, your difficulty that you're going through, the life challenge that you're going through. And I think that's when other people can help you. But most of all, your faith, and you just have to trust in God. You have to.
Amen. Well, that's the reason why we started this podcast, was because people back in March, when this idea first came about, we were realizing, and we were living ourselves, that there were no cheat days from this. There was nowhere to escape. It's not like you could take a 3-day weekend from coronavirus. And, there's nowhere to go. It's all over the world. And it is going on in every human life. And that felt, for some folks who maybe hadn't gone through some of the things yet, that, life dishes a lot to all of us, but maybe they hadn't gone through a loss that felt devastating, or an autoimmune disease that was overwhelming, or a tumor of some sort. So, but now all of us, from the youngest to the oldest, are going through something that really is a trial. It's no joke. And it looks like as we record this now, it's going to rob a lot of us of our Thanksgivings and Christmases. Maybe it
Yep.
is. We're in the middle of a surge as we record this, and it was predicted because we've returned to school and college and indoors because of the weather, but it's a devastating reality. So what? We're getting near the time that we're wrapping up now, Cheryl. But I feel like you could really help a lot of folks maybe by sharing that one of the reasons why we asked you to be on this podcast is because you haven't been able to have a cheat day from having a brain tumor. There are no cheat days or vacations from scleroderma. There
Nope.
was you have had no vacation, not a single day since 2013
No.
of being in grief. What is the key to practicing endurance when you can't escape what you're going through? There was that prayer that you said, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. How do you endure some of these things that you can't change? And you've already talked about this, in many different words, but I guess I'm wondering as we think of the listeners who maybe feel guilty now that they feel so upset about having a hard time with coronavirus or the election that we've gone through, and maybe they say, gosh, I really need to stop feeling sorry for myself. I mean, listen to what Cheryl's gone through. What would you say is the key to practicing endurance when you can't take a vacation from what you're going through?
Well, endurance, you have to persevere through life's challenges and just don't give up and appreciate others. Again, I just keep saying, keep your faith, your family. But I have to say, I've never, going through the tumors in the past decade of dealing with the brain tumors, this past summer has been the most difficult, where I found myself getting more, I don't know, it might have even been depressed when I was at my worst with my side effects from the chemo and everything. But I think it was more to do with with COVID and dealing with what everyone is dealing with. And I think the problem was, my way to deal is usually you have to keep yourself busy. I don't know if that's the healthy way to deal with it, but I would go to class or go have lunch with friends or but I don't drive anymore. I don't have my independence. John is my driver now, my husband. And COVID, I can't leave my four walls usually just to go to my doctor's appointments or do blood work, because it's just not safe. My immune system is compromised more than ever right now. And I have got to be very safe with this coronavirus. But I think most people are dealing with the same thing. And my tumors or my grief might enhance it for me, but I think that this is a real thing. The coronavirus has affected everyone. And because it's worldwide, like you said, and we don't have a rule book for it, people are getting creative, but we don't know what we're doing. We've never had to deal with this before. And the unknown is what really kills me. It's like, not knowing and taking day by day, like you mentioned, Thanksgiving, the holidays coming up. Holidays to me are about family and loved ones, and I've already discussed it with all of my family. And I think other people are all facing the same. We're all facing the same thing. We have to be safe, but we're getting worn out. We're getting tired of it, but you can't.
Right.
But I think, and I do hope that life after coronavirus would be that we will appreciate others, especially our family and friends that we're not able to see, especially those with compromised health issues and the elderly. It's hard. This is a very hard time for everyone. So no one, again, you can't have a scale to rate like whose issues are high or more pressing than, mine's not any more pressing than anyone else's. It's really not. I think actually going through the death of a child and health issues with both John and myself and my parents. I think all of that has made me stronger, and I can probably handle dealing with coronavirus better than someone who hasn't had to be dealing with things for a while. So actually, I might even be a little bit luckier there because it's prepared. I've been prepared. I don't know. It's kind of molded me to being, because you do when people. I think I was telling you, it annoys me sometimes when people tell you how strong you are. But yes, I am strong. But you have to be. I mean, what is my option?
There's no option, and I appreciate that what you're saying just resonates so much because of the person saying it, especially. How do you stay strong? You have to. We're tired of coronavirus, but you can't be. So and you've given us so much to chew on. What I'd like to do is just give the listeners just a moment before we conclude to just kind of savor and treasure some of the things we've heard with just a little bit of quiet. So if you're comfortable, you can, as you listen to this, maybe you want to close your eyes or just take a deep breath, and as long as you're not driving, and just take a second to center on what it is that Cheryl said that you needed to hear today. Was it the question about, since we're all dying, are we living? Can we ask ourselves, are we living? When Cheryl said that she doesn't want to heal from the loss of her beloved son, JC, how does that connect with your heart? What are some losses or some heartbreaks that you don't really wish to recover from? How does that intersect with Jesus saying, "Blessed are those who mourn"? What are you thinking about Cheryl telling us that she knows for sure that God is more powerful than her fear or her anger? Or that she wants to shape her pain and despair into hope? Maybe we can just all take a second whenever you're listening to this. And since Cheryl has said she will gratefully receive prayers from anyone who offers them, let's just take a moment and pray for Cheryl. Send your prayers directly to her whenever you listen to this. Pray for her doctors and nurses. Pray for John and Gary Ann. Send your prayers directly to her. Cheryl, in the midst of such a challenging time for us all, you have spoken to us hope and resilience, and we are so grateful. Thank you for taking this time to be with us.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate you, Father Scott. You've helped me tremendously.
Oh, that means so much to me. And let's pray that God uses this, the time that we've spent together, to help all the people that are listening to face their own griefs and challenges. So we send you love, all of you out there listening, and may God bless each one of you now and always.